which is basically where we then do the actual processing of people's salary. And the payslip input is where we outline the income that an individual has, and after that, the deductions that are supposed to be taken away from that person so that we can come up with a net salary. After you're done with your payslip inputting, it is important, very imperative that you go to calculation routine. Calculation routine does a bulk computation of all your taxes and inputs all the transaction codes that have been set to insert automatically. We're going to talk more about those later on as we go. And then after that, it also updates your reports. So do not go into reports unless your calculation routine has been done. We'll talk more about that when we go into actual reports. After you've done your processing and you've done your calculation routine, you then go on to view. And then from view, you're basically going on to all the reports that are found in Belina. And these include things like payslips, your journals, your reports, and all that stuff. After you've gone on to view, you can go to utilities, which is where you then do your exports. And this is where you'll find your EDI bank transfer report, which helps you do your bank transfers, as well as other journals that are adapted to other accounting packages like Pastel, Sage, and other stuff. After you've done your exports, basically it's time to do your backup, and you come back to file, you do your backup, and then after you've done that, you go back to utilities and you do your period end. Having done that, let's go into the system and actually start working. So as we've already discussed, the first thing that we want to do is go to file and click on new. This allows us to create a new payroll so that we can process our employee salaries. So on the first, on the name, we firstly have to put in the name of the payroll. I'm just going to type new payroll so that we remain consistent with what we've been talking about. After that, Belina has got the capacity to run 3 types of payrolls, either a periodic, an hourly, or daily payroll. Hourly or daily payrolls simply mean that people are going to be paid according to the number of days or the number of hours that they've worked. A periodic payroll simply means that people are going to be paid after a specific period of time. And then after you've selected which payroll you want to run, we're going to run a periodic since it's the most prevalently used payroll system. After that, we're going to go to number of periods. So what Belina does, it splits your financial year into periods for payment, i.e. if you're going to be paying your people 12 times in your financial year, it basically means that you're going to pay your people monthly. If you are going to be paying your people 26 times in a year, that simply means you're going to be paying your people every fortnight. If you're going to be paying your people 52 times within the year, it simply means you're going to be paying your people weekly. After that, we choose the country that we're going to be working in. In this case, we're working in Zimbabwe. However, Belina has got the ability to work in all those listed countries on the screen there. After that, you go to Zimbabwe. And because we're in Zimbabwe, the tax year in Zimbabwe always starts on the 1st of January of each year. 1 January 2020, 1 January 2021, 1 January 2019. The first day of the first month of each year. That's when the tax year begins. And because of this, we're going to start every payroll on the 1st of January of each year, regardless of the fact that the payroll might actually be starting in May or June or July or April or December. Whenever you're creating a new payroll in Belina, always make sure that the start date is the 1st of January of the year you're creating it in. After that, we're going to go on to the tax methods and choose the tax method that we're going to be using. There are 3 tax methods in Zimbabwe. Number 1 being FDS focus, number 2 being FDS average, and then number 3 being PAYE. FDS focused or FDS average, the FDS within those 2 simply means final deduction system, whereas the PAYE or the acronym PAYE stands for pay as you earn. All right. Now we're going to go into depth what the differences between these three tax methods very soon. But for now, we're just going to use FPS forecast as our default. And then after that, the currency. In Zimbabwe, the local currency is referred to as the RTGS dollar. This is due to the fact that the Zimbabwe dollar was in actual fact phased out. After you've selected your payroll, after you've selected your payroll name, you've set your text method in your currency, simply click on OK and create your payroll. Okay. After your payroll is created, simply click OK. And as you can see, the dashboard that we're working with earlier was grayed out, but now it's open and colored, which means that you are now able to use these options as you like. All right, and the first thing we want to go to is we want to set up the organizational structure of the company. So we're going to go to organizational, and we're going to start off with cost centers. Now, at this point, I want to emphasize this fact as it will help you in terms of your data capturing tenure. Whenever you're introducing new information to the system, the option to use is insert, which is highlighted by my cursor there. And then whenever you have pre-existing information that is there in the system, but you want to edit it, the option to use is change. So insert is for new stuff and change is for editing pre-existing stuff. All right. In this case, we've got cost centers and we've already got a cost center 1, but it doesn't necessarily belong to our company, because in our company we don't have a cost center 1. So I'm just going to click on change so that I can edit that and then go straight to the description and change it from cost center 1 to Harare. Speaking of cost centers, these can be branches, departments, sections, sectors, geographical locations within the sphere of influence of the company, where the company allocates the cost of employment. In this case, we've got cost centers that have been named after geographical locations, i.e. Harare, Bulawayo, which are basically cities found in Zimbabwe. So in this case, the company might have a branch in Harare and another branch in Bulawayo and a branch in Gweru. So instead of referring to them as actual branches, they're referring to the cost centers with the name of the city that they are based in. So we're going to have our cost center 1 as Harare and our cost center 2 as Bulawayo. Okay. After that, simply close, go back to edit, organizational, and departments. Departments are basically areas of concentration for people with a specific skill set. If you're a qualified accountant, you most likely find yourself in the accounting department. If you're a marketer, you'll find yourself in the sales and marketing department. If you're a manager, you find yourself in the management or administration department. So basically, your qualification most times determines your department, although there are exceptions to this rule in some companies where people transcend their department due to having multiple skills or being having multiple qualifications in multiple fields. So in this case, we're just going to set up our departments as sales and manufacturing. Okay. After that, we've done, and then we're going to close, go to edit, organizational, and we're going to go to occupations. All right. An occupation is basically your job description. What is it that you're occupied with during your time in the organization? It's very different from your position, because your position is your job title, which simply states who you are within the organizational hierarchy. The occupation, however, speaks to what is it that you actually spend your time within your sphere of influence as a director or as a manager or as a as a clerk or as an accountant. In some cases, you'll find that someone may have a position of accountant, but in actual fact, when it comes to their occupation, they're a data capturer. So those kind of things are what we're trying to separate and to identify with using occupations. So basically, under occupations, we're trying to figure out what is it that actually occupies your time within the designation that you've been given within the organization. So here, I'm just going to click on insert and put in an occupation for one of the people in the company. I'm going to put it as administrator. Okay. All right, and then close, and then after that, we're going to edit organizational pay points. Now, pay points are very similar to departments and cost centers, as the pay point can be a department or a cost center or even a branch. These basically refer to where people are within the organization when they receive their pay, or sometimes their pay slips, in the case where their pay is being sent straight to the bank. So basically, we're trying to figure out where the person is stationed when they receive their pay or when they receive their pay slip. All right, so these can be branches, departments, cost centers, or geographical locations, again, within the sphere of the company. So in this case, we're just going to put in the geographical locations, as they can be the same as the cost center without any problems. So Harare and Bulawayo. Those are our two cost centers. One for pay points, one setup. Go to edit organizational and positions. Now, positions are quite easy, as they simply speak to the job titles that the people have been allocated within the organization. As you can see, the system is already created for you: director, senior manager, senior accountant, driver. I'm just going to add on one, and I'm just going to name administrator. Also bear in mind that there is no law against having the same name as your position be the name of your occupation as well. Now, in which case you can have a director as your occupation and director as your position, as I've just done with having administrator as a position and the occupation also set as administrator. All right, once you're done there, simply going on to setup. Having finished with the organizational structure, you're now going to set up, and you're creating your tax bins for the year, or rather you're setting up your tax bins for the year. And because this is a new payroll, we're going on to new so that we can set up new tax bins. Now, in Zimbabwe, we've got a dual currency system, so we either use US dollars or we use RTGS for our tax bins. Or if a person can be paid in both RTGS and USD. Now, in this case, we're going to be using RTGS tax bins, so we're going to set them up first. We've already got a USD tax band, tax table set up, so we're going to set up the RTGS tax tables. So to do that, we're going to go to the button, to the ellipse button here, the button with the two dots, click there, and we're going to insert. And because the RTGS dollar is the national currency for Zimbabwe, the tax table is then called the default tax table after the default currency in the system. So we're going to click on default and close, and we're going to set that up as our tax table. And then we want to effect tax bans that were introduced as of the 1st of January 2021. So we're going to set up the 1st of January 2021 and click on this ellipse button to auto-create these tax tables. Once you've selected that, the system will ask you to make sure that you're using the correct parameters. If you are, then click yes, and the system will automatically pop out or populate with the tax bins for you. After having done that, if you are using the US dollar tax bins, it's quite simple. Simply switch over to USD, and the system will automatically switch over for you as well. Right, we're going to be using default, so let me just go back to default. After that, we're going to put in our NASA code. Select NASA, and after that, this is how your tax tables should be looking if you're going to be processing for RTGS, and if you're going to be processing for USD, this is how your tax spend should also be looking. Having done that, simply click OK. And we can move on further to the next step, which is putting in the company account details. For that, simply go to Setup and go to Company Details. Once here, the system will ask you for your postal and physical address. So here, I'm just going to put in the postal address. Somewhere. Zimbabwe. Okay. Physical address would be 124. Street name. Country, Zimbabwe. The email address would be Payroll. Right, after that, you need to put in the banking details. I'm just going to click on Insert, and we select the bank at the top. So you select the bank from. So we're just going to use Stanbic for our bank, and we're going to choose our branch being Belgravia, and then after that we're going to put in our banking details: 914 123 456 789. All right, and click OK. Before you click OK, just make sure you've got the correct currency there. So click OK after that. So basically, you've set up your company's banking details with the company name at the top, your postal address below, and on the side you've got your physical address, you've got your street name, your suburb, your city, your country, and your email address. You can also add on your telephone or fax number if you're still using that. And then after that, simply click OK, and you're done. Having done all those things, the next step is to create your employees. So we're heading back to Edit, and we're going to go to Employee Master. Once you get to Employee Master, you need to set up your employees. And to do this, as we've already discussed, in order to add in anything new to the system, you simply need to click on Insert. So you're going to click on Insert. And then once you click on Insert, the system will open the page where you need to put in the employees' details. Now, pay close attention to everything with a red asterisk. Basically, this is information that cannot be left out and information that is mandatory for you to put in order for you to use the system. And once you put it in on the first page, you need to put information on the second page, on personal 2, on works, on pay, and then on tax, for you to be able to use the system functionally. You can also input other information like medical and balances and leave conflicts. We'll talk about those later on. But for now, the most important pages are personal 1, personal 2, works, pay, and tax. So let's go back to personal 1. And we're going to put in our first employee, whose name is John Doe. All right, so his surname is Doe, and his first name is John. His national ID is 63 something 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 something. And then after that, we're going to put in his date of birth. you can use the calendar to navigate your way throughout the years much quicker and go to the year that you want. So let's just say he was born in 1980 on the 18th of April. Okay, right? And after that, you set up the gender. For now, we're going to use John Doe, who's a male, so we can leave the gender on male. After that, you can put in all the other information that you want to put in. However, it is not mandatory, so we will not be putting in any information there for now. However, you can put it in at your own accord. After that, you simply go on to personal 2. The personal email to which the payslip is going to be sent to. And when you send out these payslips to the people, they are going to be encrypted. In other words, they're going to have a password protection on them. And this is also where you set up the password. Now, the password can be set by the administrator on behalf of the employee, or the employee can come and ask the administrator to set a specific password for their payslip. After that, go to Works. And then under Works, the first thing we need to put in is the engagement date. The engagement date basically refers to the date the person started working for the organization. So this person started working on the 2nd of February 2020. All right. After that, we need to set up his occupation. He's an administrator in the sales department, and the pay point is Harare. So basically, this information is being taken from the information that we set up under organizational structure. To put it into perspective, the organizational structure is the foundation upon which you would then put your employees to set upon. All right, and then after that, we go on to position, to administrator, and then cost center. Should you have forgotten to put in anything, or should you need to put anything that is not available on the drop down that you've already selected, simply go onto the ellipse button, which will take you back to the original page, and from there you can create the new item. In this case, under occupation, we want to select manager, so that we can have manager option on the occupation. Simply close, and after that, if you go here, it will now be available on the drop down. After you've selected your occupation and set up everything that has a red cert, i.e. the mandatory information, you can then go on to leave entitlement, which basically speaks to how much leave days or how many leave days are allocated per individual per year. Some companies will allocate 22, while others will allocate 30 days, and while others will allocate 24. In this case, we're going to allocate 30 days, which simply means that this person is going to be accruing 2.5 days every month for the whole year for their employment tenure. After that, we've got the employment type, which can be either full-time, contract, part-time, casual, seasonal, cadetship, full-time with probation, or apprenticeship. Melina has got all those options, and if for some reason the option that you're looking for is not there, you can use the ellipse button to create the one that you want. After setting up everything on the works page, you can then move on to pay. Under pay, we're setting up the payment method, which is the method by which this person is going to be paid. In most companies in Zimbabwe, the method of choice is transfer, as most people get paid through the bank. However, you can pay by cash, check, or into a savings account. So we're going to use transfer, and then the payment basis simply means we're going to what kind of basis are we going to be paying this particular employee on. It can be either periodic, daily, or hourly. So again, this works whether you've created the payroll or you haven't created the payroll. If you've created the periodic payroll and for some reason the person within your payroll has got working conditions that require you to pay them according to the number of days that they've worked or according to the number of hours they've worked, you can set that up under payment basis. After that, simply go on to rate of pay, which is where you're going to be setting up the employee's basic salary. Again, this is the employee's basic salary without any allowances or benefits. It's simply the basic salary as is. All right, so basically, this is basic salary, and we're going to set up the basic salary at 22,000 RTGS. All right, once you put in your basic salary, you can then put in your banking details. These are now the employee's banking details to which his payment is going to go to his net pay after taxation and other deductions. Simply click on insert and select the bank from the top. This can be any bank that the employee uses. In this case, we've just chosen CABS. After that, put in his account number. All right, and then after that, we've got an allocation tab here. This allocation tab allows you to split your employee's net pay into multiple bank accounts of his or your choosing. You can simply allocate to say 10% or 20% of his salary goes to this bank and the rest goes to this bank or these other banks, plural, which basically means that you're not limited to just two. You can go as many as 3, 4, 5, or as many as you want, or as many as the employee can allow to have on the banking details. After that, your transaction code is net pay, which is basically the amount that's going to go to the bank, and we've set this bank account as the default bank for this employee. After that, simply click OK and close. Once you've got your banking details set, it's now time to set up your tax parameters. All right, and then you go on to tax, and then after that, simply select the tax method. Now, of the three tax methods that are in Zimbabwe, the two that are used are either FDS focused or PAYE. FDS focused is used when an employee joins the organization at the beginning of the tax year, i.e., they've joined the organization within the first month of the tax year, between the 1st and the 31st of January. And it is imperative to know whether they've been paid within that month. So if an employee joins the organization within the first month of the tax year, between the 1st and 31st of January, and is paid within that first month of January, then they qualify to be on FDS focus. Another scenario is that an employee has been with the organization from the previous years and is starting a new year with that organization. That employee is taxed using FDS focus. And then we've got the second option, which is pay as you earn. An employee that joins the organization after the 31st of January, i.e. from the 1st of February going onwards until the end of the year, that employee is taxed using PAYE. The reason for this is in the difference between the calculation matrix of the two. FDS focus uses the entire year's income to calculate the employee's annual tax and annual taxable income. The PAYE option only uses the monthly income to calculate the taxable income and the subsequent tax. So for the employee to be taxed correctly after having joined the organization after the beginning of the tax year, we need to use PAYE because it will only focus on the month-by-month income to calculate the tax. However, once an employee can be within the organization for the full year, we use FDS focus so that the system can spread out their tax for the whole year and the tax can be more consistent and managed. All right, so because we're starting a new year and the employee was there before the new year, we're going to use FDS focus, and the taxable type we're going to be using is default because the employee is earning in INTITUTE. After that, we can talk about the rest of the stuff, which is medical. This is basically where you set up your medical aid schemes for the employer, should the employee be paying anything towards a medical aid provider. And then after that, we've got balances, which is where you find the employee's annual leave and leave bank. Leave bank is basically used when an employer will then say that for overtime work, we will not be paying you in money, but we'll be allocating those hours to your leave days. So in order for those leave days to not clash or confuse us with the annual leave, for the 30 days for the annual leave, we're going to keep them separately in the leave bank. Also, you will find other balances here, like your loan balances should the employee have loans, and you've got leave conflicts, which basically inhibits having more than one employee from the same department that is crucial to the organization's thriving go on leave at the same time. So this will help in your leave planning so that you don't leave the department open or exposed without any individual working in it. That's for your planning. But in terms of running the payroll, these tabs, personal 1, personal 2, works, pay, and tax, will suffice with the information that is there. After you've done that, simply click OK, and the system will have created an employee for you. Should you have missed a step in creating the employee, the system will indicate that you've missed a step, and it will tell you exactly where the step has been mixed, and you can go back to correct whatever needs to be corrected. Once you've done that, simply click OK, and you'll have the employee created like this. After creating your employee, it is now time to set up your transaction codes. And basically, this is the 6th step of your data capturing process. The first instance, we created the payroll. We've set up the organizational structure. And after that, we went to create the tax setup. And after that, we've created the company accounting details. And after that, we've created the employee. After creating your employee, you're now going on to set up your transaction codes. So simply close here and go to edit and transaction codes. Now, with the transaction codes, as you can see, you'll find that most of the transaction codes that you're going to be using in your processing have already been created for you. But as Melina, we've only created the common transaction codes that are found in processing a payroll, i.e. the basic salary, the bonus, and the overtime in the regular, irregular format. Now, the difference between regular and irregular simply means that a transaction, and this transverses throughout transactions regardless of whether it's overtime or allowances or anything else. A transaction that is regular is a transaction that will be appearing on a monthly basis. However, a transaction that is irregular is a transaction that comes once, and then after that does not come in the following month. Basically, the transaction that is not consistent throughout the processing periods is irregular. Examples of this might be things like bonus, where bonus only comes once, and then you only get to see it again after some months. Or things like the payment of school fees, which is done once after every 3 months. Even though it is paid regularly every 3 months, it is still irregular because it is not consistent every month on the payroll. So the regular and irregular aspect of things when it comes to payroll simply means that when it comes every month, it's regular, and then when it comes and skips a month or skips 2 months, or does not come consistently throughout the month, it becomes irregular. All right. So after that, you've got overtime and you've got short time. Short time is basically the amount of money that is deducted from an employee for not having come to work for an illegal reason. Basically, the premise of this is that when an employee is given a contract, time stamps are stipulated that the employee should be at work during the time of 8 up to 5. And if the employee is not at work from that time, then the employer reserves a legal right to deduct the amount of money that is equivalent to the hours or days that the employee was not at work. And that is what we call short time. After that, we've got other things like your irregular allowance and your normal allowance. Your normal allowance would be the standard for things like your transport, your housing, your airtime, your food allowance, cost of living, hardship allowance. Those kind of examples are what fall under your normal allowances. And then your irregular allowances would be things like your school fees, allowances, and any other thing that is not given to an employee regularly. All right. After that, we've got other transactions that are there, like your CILL, which is your cash in lieu of leave. You've got your vehicle benefit, which basically stands in for the time that the person is given a company car. Your leave days taken, your leave paid in advance, your leave adjustment. So I'm just going to talk about leave days taken, which is the transaction that you use to indicate that the person has taken leave. But here we're simply laying out all the transactions that we're possibly going to be using in our system. And also, we're going to be setting up some which are standard or rather statutory in terms of our processing. Things like NASA, which is by law supposed to be deducted from all employees, and WCIF, which is basically Workers' Compensation Insurance Fund. Again, that is supposed to be deducted by law. And then you've got your tax levy, which stands in for your AIDS levy, and your PAYE, which is also deducted by law. We've got other things that are deducted that we're going to set up later on in terms of learning how to create a payroll transaction code. But for now, let's focus on NASA. Now, for NASA, as of January up to June, we're going to, the law stated that the employer should deduct 225 RTGS at the most from the employee, which basically means that 225 was our threshold. So the most that an employer could deduct from an employee and also could pay on behalf of the employee was 225. This is owing to the fact that NASA simply stated that they would want 4.5% of the employee's earnings for their national pension scheme, and the maximum insurable earnings for that 4.5% was 5,000 RTGS. So if you multiply 5,000 RTGS by 4.5%, it will give us 225, which is our threshold. Now, this threshold only applied from January up to 31st of May. Since we're in January for our payroll, which is stated here at the bottom, since we're in January, we're going to be using these settings. And then for NASA, you can look for our NASA video, and we will be explaining the differences and the calculation matrix of how NASA is calculated. However, for now, our NASA is 4.5% of the employee's basic. So we're going to set it as a dependency. And we're going to go on to dependencies and select basic, which is already selected, and also short time, because short time reduces the amount of basic. So for it to be accurate, we're going to have to make it depend on basic and short time together. And then, because NASA is a statutory instrument, we're going to set it to insert automatically so that it comes onto people's payslips automatically. And because we've already outlined the calculation matrix for NASA, there's no need for us to manually edit it. So we're going to remove manual edit and select OK. After that, we've got WCIF, which is paid by the employer. So as you can see, the employee side is already grayed out, owing to the fact that this is an employer contribution, which is paid only by the employer, but it is paid on behalf of the employee, basing on the employee's income. So we're going to set the contribution type here to WCIF, and the percentage normally ranges around 1.something%. So we're going to put 1.25 for our example. And then this is a statutory instrument, so we're going to have it insert automatically. Remove manual edit because we're going to stipulate the calculation matrix here. And then after that, it is also dependent on the employee's basic salary. And because it's dependent on basic salary, short time follows. After that, close and click OK. Right? After setting up this, we then need to set up other transaction codes that we're going to be using. Now, in other companies, you may want to use things like transport, housing allowance, cost of living, as we've already talked about, normal allowances. But in cases where you do not want to use what's already been prescribed for you, you can create your own transaction code. And to do this, you simply go on to insert, and then once you click on insert, you're presented with a list of categories from which you have to choose from. Now, things like your transport, housing, cost of living, hardship are all classified as normal allowances. And then after that, you can choose the type of allowance that you want to create basing on the regularity or irregularity of the transaction. So since we're going to be creating a cost of living allowance, which comes in every month, we're going to be selecting allowance, normal, regular. So we're going to select allowance, normal, regular, and we're going to change the name here to cost of living allowance. Okay. And because this amount is not prescribed and it changes from person to person, we're going to simply tick manual edit and click OK. We're going to do the same for transport and housing allowance. Transport allowance. Okay, and manual edit and OK. And housing allowance. And simply manual edit and then OK. Once you've got that set, you can then set up other transaction codes that we're going to need, like ZIMBABWE and standards levy, which are also statutory instruments. If you click on insert, these you're going to find under the category of other employer contributions. Other employer contributions, select that and then change the name to ZIMBABWE. And then after that, simply select on the contribution type, ZIMBABWE, and then click 1%, the percentage, and after that, simply click OK. We're going to do the same for standards development levy. Again, we're going to go back to other employer contributions, and then change the name to standards development levy. That contribution type, standard development levy, and 0.5%, which is the percentage from standard development levy. Once we're done with the standard development levy and we've done with all the other transactions, we can then close and go on straight to step number 2 of our 6-step processing. Again, we've just done with data capture, so we're moving on to step number 2, which is processing. All right, then let's go back to the system. We're going on to processing, and for processing, we said we use the menu option process. So we go to process and we go to payslip input, where we'll find the list of our employees. In this case, we only have one employee, who is John Doe. And then we're going to select our employee and then open his profile. From there, we're simply going to insert the transactions that we want to see on his payslip. The first one being the basic salary. Once we select the basic salary, the amount that's going to show up on the basic salary will be taken from the amount that was stipulated in his employee master profile to say this person is going to be earning 22,000 every period or every month. And then after that, we then input other transactions like the cost of living allowance that he's going to be earning. In this case, we're going to assume that it is 15,000, and then after that, we're going to input the transport allowance, which is going to be 5,000 RTGS, and after that, input also his housing allowance, which is we're going to put in his housing allowance, and then that's 10,000. And then after that, okay, so we've got his basic salary, but his cost of living allowance, but his transport allowance, housing allowance, and then the rest like NASA, WCIF, standards levy, and ZIMBABWE, we've already set to insert automatically. The PYE calculation is going to be done based on the tax bins that we've already set up. The tax levy will be calculated based on the PYE as it is 8 levy. And the net pay pay is going to be determined after all the deductions have been made. After that, we click on compute and let the system do the calculations for you. And as you can see, the calculations have been done. The PYE has been calculated, the NASA has been calculated as prescribed, and the WCF has also been calculated as prescribed. The ZIMBABWE is 1% of all its earnings, which is that, and the standards development levy is 0.5% of all its earnings, which is that amount as well. Having done this, simply click on close and close there. And after that, go to process and then calculation routine. As we've already discussed, calculation routine does your bulk text computation, and it also inputs all the transactions for all people in the payroll. After having done your calculation routine, click on close, and we're going to go to view, and then here, first thing we're going to do is go to payslips and payslip print. Basically, we're going to be looking at the payslip after we've created it. Now, the page that we're looking at is called a range selection page. It allows us to view reports in specified formats, or rather for specific groups. You can view reports per cost center, per department, per grade, per NEC grade, pay point. You can view reports for people who are banking with a specific bank, the transaction. You can view reports according to position, occupation, or you can select specific employees, and this is done by simply ticking on use tagging and going to employee, whereupon you can then select the employee, click OK, and click on preview. All right, and that's what our payslip will look like. Now, I want you to pay attention to the following. The arrows at the top left-hand corner will give you the option to go to the first page or the last page should your report have more than one page. The in between arrows without the dashes at the end will give you the option to go to the previous or to the next page. After that, you've got your binoculars, which work the same way as Find in Word or Excel, and then you've got the magnifying glass to zoom in or zoom out. The grade printer allows you to print the reports there and then you can export any report that you find in Selena to Word, Excel, PDF, and rich text or another Excel format. And then after that, you can bring out your calculator should you want to confirm what you're looking at, and the red X is used to close the report. The standard payslip in Selena will have the following information: the period over which the payslip has been generated, things like your national ID, the payment method, the cost center, the pay point, the department you belong to. If we had put it in the NASA social security number, your NEC grade, your pay rate, which is basically your basic salary, your position within the company, your leave balance, which comes from the leave entitlement that we've put in of 30. So basically the system is now running your leave accumulation automatically. So this person has accumulated 2.5 days for this month. So they can now actually go on leave for 2.5 days. Sick leave to date, if you've taken any days off because you're sick, and then your banking details, your account number, your date that you started working for the company, and the pay date, which is basically the day the payroll was run. After that, you've got information like the basic, your cost of living, your transport, all your earnings listed here, and all your deductions listed on the next column. And after that, you've got your year-to-date amounts, basically tell you how much you've earned up to date. After that, you've got your totals at the bottom, which is your total income, which is 52,000, your total deductions, and your net pay, also corresponding from this amount, which is also your net pay. After that, we close, and we can go on to the next few reports. So basically, the next reports that we're going to go what we refer to as the standard reports that the employer must have and the employee must be able to produce should he or she be running the payroll for that company. So the first one we're going to go to after the payslip is view payslip, and it's called the payslip summary. Payslip summary. So it's view payslips and payslip summary. That's how you find it. Preview. This report gives you the summary for all the payslips for all the individuals within the company. It separates your earnings and your deductions, and it gives you a balance. Basically, it helps you to balance out your account to make sure that there's nothing that went in under the table or over the table. All right, and then after that, we're going to close, go to view, and we're going to go to payments, and then we're going to go to bank transfer. Now, this report allows you to see how much money is going towards the employees in their bank accounts. So in order to view this amount, we need to select the correct transaction code, and the transaction code we're going to be paying towards the bank is the net pay, which is the pay that we're going to get after all the deductions have been made. So I need you to click the drop down on this menu and select net paid and then preview. This is going to show us the list of employees. So it'll be the list of employees with their names and their bank and the account number and the amount that's going to go to that person. And then after that, it will give you a total for everyone or for all the employees within the system. And it will be underlined twice like this. Please take note of this amount because it will come into play very soon. So after you've taken note of this amount, this is the amount that is going towards the employees' salaries or towards the employees' banks, so as payment as their salaries. We're going to close that, and we're going to go to view, and after that we're going to go to journals and then transaction codes. This is your transaction journal. It allows you to do your account much easier, as it allocates everything to where it's supposed to be. With you've got your employee payments, you've got your employee deductions, and then you've got your employer contributions, all listed, and the benefits thereof. After that, you've got your total number of employees. So basically, this will work as your journal, and you can file it in your filing system. And then after that, we close. Go to the third-party reports. The first third-party report we're going to go into is the ZIMBABWE monthly return. All right, and then on this report, you need to input all this information, and you will get it from your the SDL number. You'll get it from your ZIMBABWE offices. You can call them, and they can give you that number. Your BP number you'll get from your tax returns. As when you register with Zimra, they will give you a business partner number, and then nature of business, declarant, which is the person who's going to be declaring on behalf of the company, and then the postal address, which is basically the address of the company. After that, simply click OK and preview. And then the system will generate for you the ZIMBABWE report that you're supposed to submit for your ZIMBABWE return. So basically, you export this file and you attach your proof of payment, having paid your monthly return, which is 522.25 in this case. You submit that for filing at the ZIMBABWE offices. So you can send this via email, as I've said. You can export this to PDF and attach your proof of payment, and that's it. After that, go back to view, third parties, and you've got your standard delivery remittance. Again, all that information is going to be required. Simply click OK, and then click on preview. This one is submitted every 3 months, so you'll submit it first of all in March, then after that in June, then after that in September, then after that in December. So basically every 3 months is when you're expected to submit this, and it will be for that 3-month tenure. Again, you export this, you attach your proof of payment for the amount that you paid, and you send it for filing at the standards delivery offices. Close that, it goes straight to view, and go to third parties, pensions, and we're going to go to NASA P4. So for NASA P4, first we have to set up a report. So we go on to setup and we click on insert so that the system can identify the transaction codes that are going to be used for our NASA for our NASA report. The first one is the basic salary, which constitutes all the gross earnings. So click OK, and then insert again. After that, we're going to go on to NASA, which constitutes the NASA contributions for the national pension schemes. After that, we're going to go insert again. We're going to select WCIF and link it with the corresponding transaction code, which is WCIF for your workers' compensation insurance fund. Close. So this is the setup, which is for basic. Under gross, it's yes and no for NASA, and then for NASA, it's yes and the NASA, and no for basic and WCIF. For WCIF, it's a yes under WCIF, and a no on basic, and a no on NASA. So make sure that your setup is like this before you continue. Then click on close, and then we're going on to our NASA limits. Then for NASA limits, for January up to May, it was 5,000 RTGS. So we're going to change that, change it from 999 up to, change it to 5,000 RTGS. It was only changed in June, and we're going to cover that in another video. But for now, it's 5,000 RTGS from January up to May. Since we're processing the payroll in January, the correct setup would be this. Then after that, click close. Click OK and preview. Once you click preview, the system will generate the amount for you, the report for you. So this is what your NASA P4 form would look like, and then you can export this as well and submit it to NASA together with your proof of payment. Let's close there. And we're going to go to view, third parties, pension, and then NASA P4A. So again, all the information that's there is required. You need to put in your postal address, your SSI number, you get that from NASA, as well as your EC number. And then after that, okay, and preview. Once you click on preview, the system will generate for you a form that has got both your NASA contribution and your WCIF contribution. So this is the total amount that you need to submit to NASA. Again, submit this together with your NASA P4 and your proof of payment for the total amount that is supposed to be paid to NASA, which in this case is the combination of your National Pension Scheme Fund and your WCIF fund, which is basically your workers' compensation insurance fund. Then you put the two together and you submit that for your NASA returns. After that, close, and we can go on to view, and then tax, and then ZIMBA P2. This is your tax return, and it is submitted on the 10th of the following month. So if we're going to be running a payroll in January, that means the due date would be the 10th of February for our return. Our region, if you're going to be in Harare, is 01, and the station is Kurima House. That's where everyone in Harare is supposed to. And then after that, the trade name is Payroll. That's the name of the company. And then after that, you've got your business partner number, which you're given by ZIMBA. In this case, we're just going to assume that it's 02,000, 200,000, and then okay. And then preview. After you've clicked on preview, the system will show you everything that's required on your P2 return, and it will also show the total remuneration, the total number of employees, and the gross VOIE, the AIDS levy, and the total tax that is due for submission to ZIMBA. Again, you can export this and attach your proof of payment for filing with your ZIMBA offices. And then after that, you click close. Having done all this, means you've submitted all your returns, you've submitted all your payslips. What's left for you to do is to actually pay out your income. And for that, you go to utilities and exports and EDI bank transfer, and then we're going to salaries and wages. So basically, this is done in order to pay your salaries out. And once you get to this page, it will ask you the period, which is 2021 which is basically January, and then the date that you want to do the payment, which will probably be the end of January. And then after that, you need to put in the version for your media bank transfer file. In this case, we're going to be paying our salaries using Stanbic, so we're going to choose the version for Stanbic. And then after that, after putting in the version for Stanbic specifically, you need to put 002 on your reference so that you're not taxed on your salary payments. And then after that, the destination is basically where the Excel file that we need to process the payment in Stanbic is going to be dropped off by the system. So we're going to ask the system to drop it off on the desktop so that we can find it easily. All right, so we're going to click the button with the 3 dots, select desktop, and click OK. And you can see our destination there has changed to user desktop, and then the file extension name, which is stanbic.csv. Once you do that, simply click OK and preview. Now, when you click on preview, it's going to show you the total amount that is going to leave the company's bank account in salary payments. As you can see, it's 42,000, which is equivalent to the amount that we had on that previous report, which was the bank transfer report, or the net bank transfer report, which basically constituted all the amounts that are going to be paid out to the employees. After you confirm this amount, simply click close and click OK so that the system can create the file for you. Simply click OK once the file has been created. If you minimize everything on your desktop, you will find that on your desktop the file has been created in the format that Stanbic uses. Now I have to clarify that this format is for business online and not for enterprise, if we're going to be speaking strictly about Stanbic. So basically, this is the format in which the file has been created, which is the format that Stanbic Online uses for salary payments. After exporting that, you can go into your online banking platform and process your salaries. After having processed your salaries, you are now ready to take a backup. So you can go to File and then Backup. And to select the backup path, simply click on the button with 3 dots. In most cases, if your system has been installed correctly, if you go under this PC and Windows C, you'll find there's a folder there written Alina Backups. Select that and click OK and Backup. Then once the backup is done, you're done for the month, and all you need to do now is simply go to Utilities and then Period End. And then after that, the system will then tell you that it is about to go to the next month, which in this case is 2021 February. And before proceeding, just ensure that all those things are taken out and have been filed correctly. After that, simply declare that you've taken a backup and can now process the period end and click OK, and you will be promptly taken to the next month. Okay, so after you've gone through all those processes, you would have gone from the first stage, which is data capture, and then from data capture, we then go on to processing, where we are inputting all the transactions onto the person's payslip. After that, we go on to reporting, where we are doing all those journals and the NASA returns and the ZIMDEF returns and the ZIMBA returns. After that, we went to exporting. This is when we were doing all the salary payments, and we created the Stanbic payment Excel file. And then after that, after creating the Stanbic Excel file, we then created a backup so that we can safeguard our information